So right now in the UFC, we have plenty of great, amazing champions, and we also have plenty of bad ones. But one thing is always guaranteed for these champions, and that is they will eventually lose their belt. So in this video today, I'm going to give my prediction of every single UFC male champion and who they're going to lose their belt to if they so happen to lose it. Some might retire early on top. We don't know what's going to happen with these guys, but I'm going to give you a fighter nonetheless to take their place at the top of their division and will be crowned the champion by whatever time period I designate it as. Now, to avoid any sort of confusion, I'm only going to stick to fighters who are in their current weight class, not anybody who's moving down or anybody who's moving up, just only fighters who are currently fighting at their weight class that they are in right now. So let's not waste any more time and let's dive right into future UFC champions by weight class. So first things first, we have the flyweight division, and the current champion right now is Alexandre Pantoja. Now, right now, flyweight is really kind of dry. There's not many new up-and-coming contenders who I believe can really take the place of Alexandre Pantoja. He's already beaten Brandon Moreno 3 times. He's also beaten Brandon Royval twice. So there's not really any new clear cut contender, and I can't really put anybody who is outside the rankings into this list. I don't believe there's a clear-cut great prospect at flyweight right now. Of course, there's Tatsuro Taira in there. He's fighting Steve Erceg. He's fighting Pantoja here soon. I don't think Erceg will beat Pantoja, but I do have this one specific fighter in mind, and if he can get his act straight, if he can start making weight, I do believe he can be the next champion at flyweight and make flyweight interesting again, and that is good old Manel Kape. Now, Manel Kape needs to get his act together, start making weight. He should have fought Kai Kara-France forever ago, but guess what? He can't make weight. Like I said before, that's his biggest issue right now. He would be, I think he would revive flyweight. I think he would make the division interesting again. He's a good personality. Even though his first language is not English, he can speak English well enough to make himself very entertaining on the microphone. He's good at press conferences. I mean, Manel Kape can be very interesting, and he's also talented. His striking on the feet, I think, is, I wouldn't say better than Pantoja's, but he's definitely more technical in that aspect. He is good. He's actually a really good flyweight. The problem is he just can't make weight. And I think by the time Pantoja goes through a few more contenders, I think there's going to be him versus Manel Kape on the table. And at that point, I believe Pantoja is up there in age, and Manel Kape, I believe, is, I forget how old he is exactly. Manel Kape is exactly 30 years old. So I think in maybe a couple years time, it's going to be a long time for we see Manel Kape get a title shot because he can't make weight. But in years time, I think we're going to see Pantoja versus Manel Kape. We're going to see an older Pantoja and a around 31, 32-year-old Manel Kape get in the octagon with him. And I think he would beat Pantoja at that time. So my future prediction in maybe a couple years is probably going to be Manel Kape to get it done over Pantoja in the future. But we move on up a weight class to bantamweight, and obviously the current champion right now is Sean O'Malley. And when it comes to O'Malley, there's options on the table here. Obviously, you can pick Merab Dvalishvili to beat O'Malley. That is a terrible matchup for him, but I think O'Malley will beat Merab, surprisingly. Another one can be Corey Sandhagen. You can put him into this category as well. There's plenty of options that you can choose for O'Malley to lose against down the line in his career, but he's extremely protected. He's actually really good. I think he is the best striker in the UFC, and I don't see him losing his belt too easily. It's going to take somebody who has a different level of skill and who is also younger than O'Malley. I'm predicting O'Malley to have a pretty long championship reign here, and I think in a few years' time, the UFC is going to try to make sure this guy does not get a title shot. Actually, maybe they will. It depends on how his fighting style goes. If he remains boring, then the UFC will definitely make sure he does not get a title shot anytime soon. But since he's from this different area of the world, the UFC still might push him anyways, no matter how boring his fights may be. But if they can be entertaining, the UFC will definitely push him. But certain fans love this guy. Overall, he's a good prospect we have in the UFC, and that probably will be Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, Umar right now is ranked number 10 at bantamweight. He's not too highly ranked. Obviously, these Dagestanis, they don't make weight in a quick amount of time. They need to have an 8-week training camp with no injuries before they fight anybody. So it's going to be a long time before we see Umar at the top of bantamweight. But I think once he gets there, he's going to be fighting O'Malley probably in a few years' time. O'Malley probably can beat Umar. He's shown to be chinnable at least, or at least droppable in his last fight. And if anybody can crack a chin, it will be O'Malley, but it will be an older version of him. And he might even retire on top. Who knows? We might only see O'Malley for 3 years and that's it. And he's going to retire and call it quits at that point. But I think if these two do fight, Umar probably has the best chance in the future of beating O'Malley just with a grappling style. Again, it's a bad nightmare matchup for O'Malley if he does fight Umar, and I think he has the best chance. I'm not a huge fan of Umar, but you know what? I have to recognize that he is really good in the grappling department. He shows a next level sort of ordeal. I think most Dagestanis do show that next level, especially at the top of the division. Anybody named Nurmagomedov typically has good grappling skill. And I think if O'Malley does fight Umar in a few years' time, there's going to be big issues. But moving on up to featherweight, we have Ilia Topuria. Now, Ilia is a really difficult one to predict because I think Ilia is going to be a dominant champion. I don't see Ilia losing the belt in the next 5 years if he goes that long. But the issue with Ilia is that he's talking about retiring pretty much already. I think he said he wanted to retire at age 30. I think he's 27 now. So it's pretty bad for us fans. I think we want to see Ilia have a long, nice career in the UFC. But again, these fighters want to get their bread, get their belt, and then just dip because brain damage, of course. So if I'm being 100% honest with you, I don't see anybody beating Ilia in the next 3 to 4, maybe even 5 years. But I am making a whole video about this, so I have to give you somebody at least. And that's probably going to have to be Max Holloway. We know Max, I think he has probably one of the better styles to beat an Ilia Topuria, a granite chin, a volume striker, a guy who can probably take it to him and then take his shots as well. I think overall Holloway does have one of the better styles to beat Ilia Topuria. Do I still see him beating Topuria? No, I think if they fought tomorrow, I think I would take Topuria to win by knockout. I think he would actually crack Max Holloway's chin and drop him for the first time in his career. But I still have to acknowledge that Max Holloway is that dude. He is that guy. And if anybody could beat Ilia Topuria right now, I think it's going to be Holloway. I don't see Volk beating Ilia again. I think his chin is completely done. I think Volk overall is done in his career. I think he should retire after he gets the rematch versus Topuria. But again, if anybody could beat Ilia right now, I think the person with the best chance of it is Max Holloway. But moving on up to lightweight, the current champion right now is Islam Makhachev. And this is kind of the same thing with Topuria. I don't really see anybody being Islam for a very long time, especially right now. I don't see Oliveira. I don't see even Arman Tsarukyan. I don't see Beneil Dariush. I don't see Poirier. I don't see Gaethje. I don't really see anybody in the top 5, even top 15 at lightweight currently right now beating Islam Makhachev. I think he will retire on top just like how Khabib did. But like I said before, I have to pick somebody, and obviously that's going to be Arman Tsarukyan. Arman Tsarukyan fought Islam forever ago in a very competitive fight, and that was like a 22-year-old Arman Tsarukyan. I think he's like, what, 25 now, 26, maybe even 27, but he's still very, very young. And Islam right now is like 32. Yeah, Islam is 32. So this is a very young Arman Tsarukyan. I think once he does get his title shot, if it happens tomorrow or like if it happens right after Islam beats Poirier, I probably will take Islam. But if it happens in the next couple of years, then maybe Arman can probably get it done. He's still very young in his career. He's a very young guy, and he could possibly just outskill Islam with the grappling, an older Islam to be said. And then if Islam just beats everybody, then retires without fighting Arman Tsarukyan, I think Tsarukyan probably gets the shot at the vacant belt, and then he probably wins that against whoever. I'm going to take Arman, but I could be totally wrong here. The UFC, it's a very unpredictable sport. As much as we are confident, things don't make sense sometimes. MMA just doesn't make sense in the slightest. And who knows, maybe Poirier just one-punch KOs Islam out cold in the first round. Shit just happens, and it could be Poirier. I don't know, but I think the most logical pick would probably be Arman Tsarukyan here. I could be wrong still, but I'm going to take Arman here. But moving on up to welterweight, the current champion right now is Leon Rocky Edwards. And again, I don't see Leon Edwards losing his belt for a little bit of time. I think he beats Bilal. I think he might even end up beating Shavkat. Now, Shavkat would be a great pick. I think you could also put him in here, but I didn't pick him because I think there's somebody else who might be a bit of a hot take here, but I think he fits the mold just a little bit better. So I think the next champion maybe could be Shavkat. I could be wrong, but I think even if it's after Shavkat, it's going to end up being Ian Gary. And I know we don't like Ian Gary. Ian Gary has a very cringe personality, but Ian Gary is good. He's really good. He can make it boring. He's very good on the feet. He can grapple as well. If you watched him in Cage Warriors, he could grapple. Ian Gary simply is very good at MMA. He's very good at fighting. And he's only, I believe, 26 years old. The dude's young. The dude's very, very young. And he's going to have a long UFC career. He's determined. He proves the eye test. He's good. I know we had a tough fight with Jeff Neal, but Jeff Neal's really good, man. Jeff Neal would probably give Edwards a tough fight as well. If Jeff Neal fought Leon at the time that Ian Gary fought him, I think it would look somewhat similar. I think it would just be Leon Edwards barely outstriking Jeff Neal for 5 rounds. That's just how it is. That's also how Edwards fights in the first place, but I think it would look very similar. I don't think the Jeff Neal fight tells the whole story about Ian Gary. I think Ian Gary is very good. He can be chinned, but Edwards doesn't have the most power in the world. The only way I see Ian Gary really even losing by the time he hits the championship belt is if he fights Jack Della Maddalena, who would probably knock his lights out. But other than that, man, I think everybody at welterweight right now is a decent matchup for Ian Gary. I do think he beats the majority of people in the top 5 at welterweight. I think he's good. I know he's annoying. I know we don't like him, but Ian Gary simply is good. This is kind of a hot take. You might disagree with me here, but if you disagree, let me know in the comment section down below about who you think would probably beat Edwards over Ian Gary. But we move on up a weight class, up to middleweight. The current champion right now is Dricus du Plessis, and you could pick a plethora of people. You could pick Adesanya. You could pick Strickland in a rematch. You could pick Cannonier. You could pick Hamzat. You could pick a lot of people, honestly, to beat Dricus du Plessis. I'm not sold that he is the best middleweight on earth right now, but he is good. And I think, honestly, I think Dricus is going to have a decent run at middleweight. I think we're going to see maybe 2-3 defenses from du Plessis before he loses. And I think by the time that he gets old enough, by the time we see Dricus going on a nice little run at middleweight, I think we're going to see an up and coming, a finally rising, made the rankings Bo Nickel. I know it's Bo Nickel. I know you're mad at me right now. I know you're saying, no way, this guy's overrated, but he's young. We're only seeing the beginning of Bo Nickel's career. He's 6-0. It's going to be a long time before we see him get a ranked opponent. And by the time that he gets to the top of middleweight, it's going to be like 10, 11, 12-0. He's going to have experience underneath his belt. He's going to be training for a very long time. He's going to improve his striking. He already has good wrestling. This guy, Bo Nickel, has legit potential at middleweight. And I think we're going to see Dricus du Plessis go on a little bit of a run here. And by the time he gets pretty old in his career, we're going to see a 31, 32, 33-year-old Bo Nickel who has been really working on his game, working on his striking. He's going to be deadly elite. And I think we're going to see Bo Nickel beat Dricus du Plessis, an older version of himself, and he will gain that middleweight strap. That's my prediction. Obviously, you can differentiate from me. You can pick Israel Adesanya if you want to. There's plenty of good options. I'm not going to lie here, but I do think Dricus du Plessis is pretty good. I think he beats Adesanya. I think he beats Strickland again in a rematch. I think he beats an old man, Cannonier, who has improved, to be honest, but I do think he beats Cannonier. I think if he survives a first round versus Hamzat, he beats Hamzat. Again, I think we're going to see a pretty long, decent reign from Dricus du Plessis. And by that time, he's almost done with his career. We're going to see Bo Nickel finally get into the rankings and work his way up the division and be ready for a title shot. I think by that time, we're going to see Bo Nickel at the top of his game and be ready to get a win for the belt. Now, moving on up to light heavyweight, the current champion right now is Alex Poatan Pereira. And let's be real here, Alex Pereira is 36 years of age. he doesn't have too much time left at the top of the sport. He's good. I love Pereira. He's one of my more favorite fighters in the UFC. I think he's going to have maybe 1 or 2 more defenses, and that's it. And he's incredibly active right now, getting as many fights in as possible. He won't have the belt for, I think, that much longer. And we already know there's grapplers at light heavyweight. There's plenty of them. Magomed Ankalaev is one, but I don't think it's going to be Ankalaev. This one might be another hot take here. I'm going to take Yuri. Now, when I was watching film for Jamal Hill versus Alex Pereira, I watched Yuri versus Poatan back. And one thing that I took away from this is that Yuri was kind of whooping his ass. Up until the knockout blow, Yuri Prochazka was doing work on Alex Pereira. He was winning. The low kicks were a big issue for him. I agree with that. But I think on the feet, I think Prochazka was giving all that Poatan could handle. And obviously, Yuri took him down in that fight. So if that left hook doesn't land from Pereira, who knows? We might have seen Yuri win that fight. And I think in a rematch, I think Yuri has a chance. Pereira is 36 right now. If he fights Yuri again, he might be 37, 38. We're going to see a very, very old Alex Pereira who is striking, who might slow down and lose power as he ages. And Yuri, who is not too young himself, but I think he is decently young enough. His style is just so unorthodox. And if he could be successful against Alex Pereira in their first fight, I think in their second fight, I think he might prove some people wrong. I think Yuri has the best chance right now. Anybody moving down or up, I don't know. Magomed Ankalaev could obviously just out-grapple Pereira for 5 rounds and make it a boring fight, but that would be a boring prediction. I think Yuri is like kind of an iffy one, a nice hot take one, but it does kind of make sense if you really think about it. But moving on up to our final weight class at heavyweight, the current champion right now is Jon Jones. I think Jon Jones will fight Stipe Miocic, win that fight, and then retire and call it a career. But I have to give him somebody, and this one I think is pretty obvious. If Jon Jones mans up and he fights Tom Aspinall, he gets KO'd in the first round by my boy Tommy Aspinall. He wins. Now, will this fight ever happen? Probably not. Jon Jones has made it pretty clear he does not want to fight Tom Aspinall. But if he does fight Stipe and then sticks around to fight Tom Aspinall, I think he loses. And if Jon Jones decides to retire anyways and not fight Aspinall, I think Aspinall gets that vacant belt anyways. I think whichever timeline you're in, I think it is Tom Aspinall getting that heavyweight belt at some point in his career. I think he's better than everybody. He is fast. He is powerful. He is pretty much a different caliber of heavyweight right now. He is good. He can grapple. He can strike. He can do everything. He's fast. He is, I think, the most elite heavyweight in the world right now. I truly do believe Tom Aspinall is that dude, and I think he would beat Jon Jones if he ever fought him. If only Jon Jones would fight Tom Aspinall, all of our questions would be answered. But will that happen? I don't know. I think it's a good shot in the dark. I think if we pressure Jon Jones enough, he might do it. But again, it's Jon Jones. He might just still say no. So who knows what's going to happen in the future. I will take Tom Aspinall if they ever do fight. Jon Jones is pretty old in his career. He's not built for heavyweight, man. He put on fat. Heavyweight is not Jon Jones' natural weight class, and he's old. I just don't think he's made for heavyweight. He beat Cyril Gane by grappling. Okay, I think a lot of people beat Cyril Gane by grappling. I think Tom Aspinall takes down Cyril Gane and chokes him out in the first round. I just think that Cyril Gane's ground game is just one of his worst attributes, and Jon Jones pretty much was the first to expose that. But I won't yap your ears off about how Tom Aspinall beats Jon Jones. I'm taking Tom Aspinall to be the future champion of the heavyweight division. So that's all I have for you guys. That was my full prediction of future champions in the UFC, sorted by weight class. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications. If you disagree with me at any point in this video, leave a comment down below in the comment section. But I am out of here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.